Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State and Trump's national security advisor, notes that the purpose of his meeting is not to make concessions to Putin. In no way are these negotiations perceived as if the United States will fall under the Russian dictator. Rubio said this in an interview with Sid and Friends in the Morning and was quoted on the State Department's website. Rubio explains what people should understand about this meeting, in case we don't really realize something. People need to understand that for Trump, meeting is not a concession. Many are saying that this was a victory for Putin. A meeting is something you do to clarify positions and make decisions. I want to look this guy in the eye. And this is what the president wants to do. This is a meeting to clarify positions. Everyone will know whether this approach had a chance of success. And in an interview with Corriere della Sera, Kremlin freelance advisor Suslov voiced the Kremlin's new demands. They are capitulatory to us, to Europe. According to him, Putin wants a deal with the U.S. without involving Ukraine and Europe. We all understand that, Europe and Ukraine. This is key for the aggressor. Russia's plans are as follows. For us to withdraw our troops from Donbas, Russia will withdraw its troops from Sumy, Kharkiv, and Dnipro regions. The front line in other areas remains unchanged. Ukraine is not joining NATO. The Kremlin still needs guarantees of non-joining the alliance. A prerequisite for a ceasefire is de-NATOization. The final peace agreement should include anti-militarization and federalization of Ukraine. Suslov claims that if Ukraine rejects these proposals, U.S. President Trump will cut off all military aid to Kyiv. Like he will ban the sale of weapons for Ukraine to Europe, which will allegedly accelerate our defeat. According to him, the fact that Russia is ready to talk is a softening of the Russian position about a ceasefire, not a final agreement. Donald Trump wants to listen a little bit. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy says that territorial concessions are not a proposal by Trump or Vitkov. This is what Putin wants, and we are not ready to discuss the territory remotely without sitting at the negotiating table because it is exclusively a matter of our constitution, and these are serious issues that are addressed at the level of leaders. As Zelenskyy says, it is dangerous to talk about Ukraine without Ukraine. This will not be accepted in reality. Zelenskyy calls the meeting in Alaska a victory for Putin. And he notes that Putin did two things to win, because the meeting in the U.S. is a way out of isolation and a postponement of a possible sanctions. And Putin needs a photo with the American president to show to his plebs and say, "What a great geopolitician and strategist I am." The ball may be in our court, Zelenskyy says. Putin says he's ready for a ceasefire but wants us to withdraw troops. We won't do that. Then we end up being guilty, as if we don't agree to it. For Zelenskyy, the presence of Europe in the negotiations is important, because so far, no one but Europe has given us security guarantees. We need 2 bilateral and 1 trilateral meeting. The United States sees a bilateral meeting between Trump and Putin, and then a trilateral meeting. And our request is a bilateral meeting between Russia and the U.S., followed by a bilateral meeting between Ukraine and the U.S., and then a trilateral. After the national security advisors met online in the UK, it became clear that what was said on the phone with President Trump and European leaders was likely not the same as what Russia conveyed to the American side. The White House is getting ready for a meeting with Trump, which he himself has been begging for. It is supposed to take place at a military base in Anchorage. The White House has been looking for a suitable place for a meeting between Trump and Putin since Alaska is in the peak tourist season. American officials were rushing to find a place where U.S. President Donald Trump could meet with Russian dictator Putin on Friday, August 15th. And they faced a problem, as the summer is the peak tourist season in Alaska, and the options for a meeting were limited, CNN writes. Tomorrow in Alaska, a rally is planned against the fact that the locals do not want authoritarian dictators to come to Alaska and the Russian dictator to come to the U.S., and this is his first visit in the last 18 years. The summit organizers came to the conclusion that the only city in Alaska that had acceptable options for hosting the summit was Anchorage. It is noted that only the joint base Elmendorf-Richardson, located on the northern outskirts of the city, met the requirements for the historic meeting. Although the White House hoped to avoid a public reception of the Russian leader and his entourage at the U.S. military base, two White House officials told the newspaper that this is where the first meeting between the leaders will take place. The day before the heads of the diplomatic departments of the two countries, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov had a conversation to discuss preparation. As a rule, CNN notes, before such meetings with the other side, lengthy negotiations are held. The White House chief is approaching this meeting as an introductory session, with no particular expectations. As Roman Besmertny says, Trump actually sees Alaska as a series of summits, that it will not be just one meeting. Trump said that he did not expect any breakthroughs from it, that a series of negotiating summits could be launched, including Ukraine-U.S. summits, including the Trump-Zelenskyy trilateral meeting that our president is talking about, and we will talk about that now. Trump's press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, confirmed that the Trump-Putin summit will take place in Anchorage, Alaska this Friday, and said that the talks between Trump and Putin were actually the initiative of the Russian dictator, because this meeting will take place, as Leavitt says, because the illegitimate Russian dictator Putin asked the U.S. president to meet with him through Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who, I recall, visited Moscow on August 6th and spoke with Putin for 2 hours and 50 minutes. So, at the request of Putin, who needs to lure Trump into a negotiating trap, to postpone sanctions, to take a picture, as Zelenskyy and Kaja Kallas say. Meanwhile, Caroline Leavitt says that Trump is determined to end the Russian-Ukrainian war. Let's hear from the White House press secretary how he feels about this meeting as well. President Trump is determined to try to end this war and stop the killing. As the president has repeatedly stated, he will always favor peace and partnership whenever possible. There is no leader in the world today who is as committed to preventing or ending wars as President Trump. ABC News, citing two U.S. officials, reported that U.S. President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance will take part in a virtual meeting with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy and European allies. And for this purpose, President of Ukraine Vladimir Zelenskyy is working in Berlin. Ukrainian President's press secretary, Serhiy Nikiforov, reported that the president will arrive in Germany on August 13th. There, he will take part in a video conference with President Trump. According to Nikiforov, Zelenskyy will arrive in Berlin and hold an online meeting with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. We quote Nikiforov, "The president will have a bilateral meeting with Federal Chancellor Merz. They'll join a video conference with European leaders, NATO chief, and Donald Trump. Zelenskyy and Merz may make statements to the media at approximately 16:00 Berlin time. Also, there will be an online meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. Today, 3 online meetings are scheduled with Zelenskyy. The president will talk to European leaders and U.S. President Trump. Zelenskyy and European leaders will meet with Trump in a virtual format. The meeting, which will be held via video conference at 12 GMT, will be attended by the leaders of Germany, Finland, France, Britain, Italy, Poland, and the EU. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte will also take part in the event. After that, Trump and U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance will talk to European leaders at a separate online meeting scheduled for 13:00 GMT. Then, at 14:30 GMT, there will be an online meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, which is working on plans to support Ukraine. According to Reuters, half a dozen senior European officials said they see a risk of a deal that would be unfavorable and unacceptable to Europe and to Ukraine. European unity will be vital if this happens. Reuters reports that a source familiar with U.S. discussions says Trump may seek a deal with Putin directly, excluding Ukraine and Europe, though doubts remain due to potential issues with Kyiv and Europe.
Зазначивши, що це тоді створить для Трампа проблеми з Києвом та Європою відповідно. А нащо Трампу зайві проблеми?